My dad, a Jewish Israeli with a Morgan family origin, went to a wedding in Kyoto with a friend from Venezuela, marrying a guy from Mexico, and met my mother, a Christian Chinese from Shanghai. And here I am, juggling between Hebrew, English, Japanese, and Chinese, celebrating Hanukkah, Christmas, and Chinese New Year's. And yes, I'm a perfectly normal teenager. Am I? One question always challenges me. Where are you from? Japan, China, Israel? When I grow up, I might want to live in another country. It's going to be even harder to answer, I guess. My mother comes from China, but she changed her nationality to Japanese. She says wherever there's freedom, it's her home. She gained her open mind from her oppressed experience in her mother country. I don't have such painful experience. It can also lead to the result that I don't feel the pain of others. I take everything for granted. My parents grew up in the same conditions, same culture, same way as their parents grew up, and their grandparents grew up, and so on, having one collective memory as a Chinese or Israeli, as one nationality. They had this one clear collective memory, which their parents had, and their grandparents had, and their great-grandparents had, and so on. Now, what is my collective memory? Is it Japan, the country which I was born and grew up in? Or is it Israel, which is what my passport says? Or is it China, which I visit every summer? Maybe none of them. In this room, there are lots of kids that were born into similar conditions. We're the third culture kids. Until recently, most people were born into the same culture, grew up in the same culture, same language, history, and with the same collective memory as their parents and their grandparents, and so on. But what is our identity and collective memory for us third culture kids? I think it's where you feel home, the most safe, most love. For me, a third culture kid's home is not a country. It's something, it's somewhere, it's someone that we feel loved and protected. For us third culture kids, we feel like there's something missing. It's something right there in front of us, but we can't quite get it. It might not just be our national identity. Not knowing who you are is really hard to assimilate for us. And for me, going through the teenage years, it makes it even harder to figure myself out. But it's not always a bad thing to not know who you are or where you're from. Anthropologists say that countries are a community of imagination. An imagined community is a concept originated by Benedict Anderson to analyze nationalism. Anderson presents a nation as a socially constructed community imagined by the people who recognize themselves as a part of that group. But boundaries between countries used to be vague and are still changing all the time. Fishermen used to cross the ocean catching fish without even realizing the boundaries. Nation is a modern concept. Until now, most third culture kids are born without clear roots and identities. But it does not mean we give up searching for our identities and where we belong. When I see a news on TV about Israel and Palestine, I care a lot. And when my friends criticize products made in China, I cannot help but feeling sad. But because we are connected to various cultures and customs and way of thinking, we have the advantage of not judging which one is wrong or right, which one is better or worse. Because we have connections to many countries, we have way of thinking, and we have the advantage of not judging which one is better or worse, which one is right or wrong. We probably won't end up dying for any particular culture or religion or ideology, because we have connections to many of them, not just one. Like I said before, until now, the idea of our identity was where we're from, was based on where we grew up and where we were born, and a passed on collective memory. But my collective memory is different from my parents, and I don't have one country that represents me. Now that I don't have one country that represents me, I don't have a country to dedicate myself to, a country I have to fight for, a country I have to die for. Why is there a Make America Great Again? Why was there a referendum for the United Kingdom to leave the European Union? Because the idea that you fight for your country exists, and the idea that you are better than the others, and the idea that you're more important than the others exists. But what do third culture kids like me think about that? We don't really understand the us versus them battles and wars because we can understand both sides of the conflict, and we can personally connect to them. While I'm still figuring out who I am, I'm going to count myself as an earth person. I'm going to describe myself as a musician or an artist. And even though if my Japanese foreigner card says I'm an alien. Let's change the way we introduce someone. The next time you meet someone, don't ask them, where are you from? Ask them, what are you? Who are you? What makes you a unique and an interesting person? Does your nationality really matter? Thank you.